In the 1920s, a young British teacher, explorer and mountaineer George Herbert Lee Mallory set out on a mission to climb the highest peak in the world, Mount Everest. When asked about why he was to venture out on this task that was to, in the end, kill him, he would respond with simply, "Because it is there." Also going on to say that it is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. In 1962, America was just at the start of its space race with the USSR, and in a speech about it, John F. Kennedy would also use this same quote to encourage the people of the West to embrace space exploration and to get people to open their minds to all of the possibilities, stating, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Humanity's obsessions with space have always been there since early in our history. What is out there? What planets can we visit? Can we build cities out there to expand our race? So many questions that could only be answered by doing. However, despite humanity being a curious bunch wanting to explore the stars, we are also a territorial species, wanting to show dominance to anyone that challenges us or even insults us. And tragically for humanity, within the 24th century, they would not only embrace that space exploration fantasy, but would also go to war with one another, because war never changes. This event in humanity's history would go on to be known as the Colony War, a short but brutal event that would shape the history of life in space and would make and break a lot of the worlds out within the systems. So what was the Colony War? How did it begin? Who was a part of it? And what events were significant within it? Well, in today's episode, we will be venturing out into the stars and exploring a moment in humanity's galactic history. This is the story behind the brutal interplanet conflict. This is the story behind the Colony War of Starfield. It was the 22nd century and humanity had fully embraced space exploration, not only exploring all of the Sol system, but venturing out more into the wider Milky Way galaxy, starting as early as 2050. For humanity though, Earth was falling into utter disrepair, and it was becoming clear that this planet's ecosystem was to fall completely, making it fully uninhabitable. This forced the people of Earth to venture out of their system and to start making new homes on different planets, utilizing the resources from other moons and barren planets to build up new colonies and bases of operation on anywhere found to be inhabitable. The first place the explorers set up at was the colony of Cydonia on Mars by the Deimos Star Yards Inc., which was set up specifically to extract vital ore to help them with ship construction in 2112. This colony, however, was set up on one of the harshest areas of Mars, with the land around it being extremely inhospitable. Because of that, their whole new city had to be built underground to make sure their workers were safe from the Martian surface. With that set up and more ships venturing out into the stars, it became clear that something needed to be set up to make sure all of these colonies were defended from anyone who were to threaten them, but also allow them to create trade links from colony to colony. Eventually, as the explorers reached the new system named Alpha Centauri, they would go on to establish a main city on the planet of Jemison that would be known as New Atlantis. Jemison, and with it New Atlantis, was perfect. It was an extremely inhabitable land and was a vast area for business to be set up and homes to be established for all those looking for a new life in a new system. With this new city being set up, a new faction would also arise 3 years later that would be named the United Colonies, which would unite all of the territory gained, helping easier trade routes and better protection for all, bringing a lot of colonies some peace of mind. With this republic being set up, they would construct their main base of operations within the heart of New Atlantis, and within 2161, this whole new city would become the official capital of the United Colonies. Despite it looking like humanity could unite together through this creation of a centralized government, bringing about protection and trade routes, not all the colonies out there within the settled systems were a part of it, and still lived quite independently from any form of intergalactic government. That said, the idea of coming together to form a stronger bond and trade did appeal to many. However, the idea of joining the UC was something that just didn't sit right with them. For one group of adventurers led by the ship designer designer who helped people escape the quickly decaying Earth, Solomon Coe, he would venture out and find the Cheyenne system, which he would go on to name himself after the capital of Wyoming. And when making it into that system, he would go on to travel to the planet of Aquila and set up his camp there, seeing that the planet was habitable and had a lot of resources, perfect to set up their own new colony with its own unique city, free from the UC. Here, Solomon would go on to found the city simply known as Aquila City, which he would build up with the help of the other colonists, turning all of them into the founding families. As time went on, Solomon would become the city's first governor, and after a few years in office, Solomon would look at building up this new government, asking the city of Neon, an incredible trading city located on a fishing platform within the system of Voli, to form their own unique trade link. Not linked to the UC at all, but their own independent agreement. With Neon's agreement, the two linked together, forming their own pact, and by 2189, the two would form a new government that would challenge the UC within the settled systems. This government would name themselves as the Freestar Collective. This collective had one sole purpose, and that was to set up its own libertarian style of government, where the people living within their rule were able to live a life that was free from harsh government rules and citizenship. Essentially, the people were seen as more free compared to those living under the UC rule. But within reason, of course, they still had their own unique laws and rules, especially within their cities Aquila and Neon. With two governing bodies now within the settled systems with two very different ideologies, it was only going to be a matter of time before the two came face to face and had a problem with each other. And that indeed happened within the year of 2194, when the UC ventured out into the independent system of Narion and sought to colonize it, not thinking about the individuals who were already living there. Immediately upon entering the system, the UC colonized a medical center star station named the Clinic above the planet of Depala, and as they did, the individuals down below became outraged at the nerve of the UC, thinking they could just take over space that wasn't rightfully theirs or even negotiated with them. The residents of Narion immediately responded to this land or space grab, and after a few protests, all voted to join the UC's rivals, the Freestar Collective, to make a statement that the UC were not welcome in their system at all. As this all happened and the collective got involved, tension rose massively, and 2 years after the UC Clinic was set up, Narion was plunged into a war between the two governing bodies. Immediately upon being voted in, the collective sent in their military forces into the system to protect the locals. In response to this, the UC sent in their fleet as well, and suddenly, without any negotiation or attempts at peace talks, the two started firing upon one another and a war ensued. This war was absolutely brutal and took a massive toll on everyone involved, lasting over 2 decades. By 2216, the UC finally went on to take victory within the system as they completely destroyed the entire Freestar fleet. But this came at a cost. Back within the UC territories, its own people had started to view their own leaders as brutal aggressors, and before anything worse could happen, demanded that they bring this Narion War to an end in a humane way. The leaders had no choice. If they went against the people's wishes, they would have their own civil war on their hands. So they listened and agreed to meet the Freestar Collective to talk peace, with both signing the Treaty of Narion, ending the war and all hostilities for good. With the treaty signed, the UC allowed the Freestar to keep control of Narion in exchange for 2 concessions: payment for damages from Freestar in the form of mineral rights to multiple worlds, and an agreement that all great factions in the settled systems would limit their colonies to 3 systems each, these being Alpha Centauri, Sol and Wolf for the UC, and Cheyenne, Narion and Voli for the Freestar. It looked like all was in place for a nice peaceful time for humanity. Both of these governments agreed not to cross each other, and both had thriving settlements with cities that were bringing in tons of trade, had happy residents, and were also pretty spectacular to look at. However, like all treaties, this was not to last going into the next millennium, and once again, the settlements were plunged into yet another, more devastating war that would have dramatic consequences to all parties. The Treaty of Narion made it extremely clear to both parties after the war that they were to by no means invade and claim any more systems than they already owned. 3 was the maximum to both parties, and if they didn't obey this, there would be big consequences. In 2307, however, the Freestar Collective did just that. They would go on to move into the Lunara system and colonize the planet of Vesta, much to the United Colonies' disgust, and 1 year later, the UC went on to lodge a formal objection to the Vesta colony, clearly stating that the expansion into the system completely violated the Treaty of Narion, and this needed to be addressed immediately. As the two factions met once again to discuss diplomatic things, they would eventually break down quite dramatically, and the UC immediately ventured to the Vesta colony, placing it under siege, killing many if not all of the colony's Freestar defenders. This whole event, the betrayal of the treaty and the siege, triggered the next line of conflict between the two, this being the Colony War. The first significant battle that took place within this Colony War was the Battle of Niira. Here the UC's new soldier project named the Xeno Warfare Units would go on to send in scientifically made alien troops such as Crete Stalkers to land on the planet and capture it to use as a forward operating base against other Freestar strategic sites. The Freestar saw this as an invasion of their land and sought to take it back, sending in multiple troopers endlessly to evict the UC. However, this was to be failure after failure for the Freestar, as the UC and their Xeno Warfare units would hold the land. Each attack would also see endless destruction on the land itself, and as a result, whole regions of the planet would burn to cinders. The Freestar had no other options. They had to take this planet back and have one trick up their sleeves that would be able to combat the Xeno weapons on the surface. That was their top mech unit, known all over as the 1st Cavalry, under the command of Major Paxton Hull, who was seen by many to be a tactical genius. Despite this incredible regiment, they were also unable to take Niira from the UC, suffering massive casualties. Niira was a big failure for the Freestar Collective. They had done everything they possibly could, but it was not enough. The UC could celebrate this crucial victory. Despite that, back in UC territory, a horrific event would take place, all thanks once again to the Xeno weapons that were out there on the battlefield. On the planet of Londinion that was being specifically built up to help with the events taking place, this area was to be a supply hub for the UC's war efforts. At this same time, the UC's Xeno Warfare Division had kept an eye on a species named the Terramorph that was to be the ultimate warrior, utilizing its sheer strength and ferocity, as well as psychological abilities to overwhelm its enemies. Originally found on the planet of Ptolemy II, the Terramorphs would be kept in check due to their native predators known as the Achilles. However, thanks to the ongoing war with the Freestar Collective, the Achilles population had massively dwindled and the Terramorphs were rising in numbers and spreading quicker than expected. This all came to a head in Londinion when a sudden outbreak of Terramorphs took place, going around killing everyone and everything in their way. When this happened, it was named as the largest Terramorph outbreak anyone had ever seen, and because of it, the whole city was completely overwhelmed in just a few hours. The UC had no idea how they were spreading so quickly, but suddenly they had a major crisis on their hands, with Fleet Admiral Francois Sanon having to make the critical call on what needed to be done. Officially, Sanon, also known as Ve Victus, stated that if there was to be a mass evacuation with ships flying off everywhere, the Terramorphs would follow and more outbreaks would happen all over the systems, and with that thinking, ordered the bombing of Londinion spaceport, killing countless residents living there and completely sealing off the city. Unofficially, the story was far darker, as Sanon had discovered the truth behind the Terramorphs and their creation, keeping it to himself for future purposes, as he knew that the only way to hide it from everyone else was by ordering the destruction of the city, sealing it off completely. For this order, Sanon would officially be tried for these crimes on the people of the UC, and said to be executed for his actions. However, once again, this was just an official story, and unofficially, he remained alive, just in a UC's high security prison, with knowledge of his presence being of strict confidentiality. After the horrors of the Londinion outbreak, losing some of their major supply ports, the battle between the UC and Freestar continued on above the planet of Cassiopia to try and gain the Eta Cassiopia system vital resources. This battle was said by many to be one of the bloodiest space battles of the Colony War and ever seen before. Within it, the UC Navy would go on to lose 12 of their vital ships, which included hundreds of personnel. One of those those vital ships being known as the UC Dauntless, in which one Sarah Morgan served as chief navigator. During this battle, the Dauntless would go on to lose both its captain and its executive officer, forcing Sarah, the next highest rank on the ship, to take over command and continue the fight against the Freestar, even though their ship at this point was severely damaged. Eventually, the ship had taken too much damage and many of the crew had been killed in battle, leaving Sarah and just a few survivors struggling to escape. However, utilizing their escape shuttles to evacuate, they would seek shelter on the surface of Cassiopia 1 to try and wait it out for emergency pickup from other UC ships, with hopefully some news that they had won the Battle of Cassiopia. As the battle ended in most likely a UC victory, their navy would return to the planet and answer Sarah's rescue call. However, after saving Sarah and only Sarah, the responders did not even think that there was anyone else to save, believing it was just Sarah, and left the area forgetting behind many of the other individuals who had been evacuated from the Dauntless, leaving them to their own fates. Whilst all of this was going on, multiple battles were happening all over the settled systems, utilizing some of the latest technology and weaponry humanity had created, such as state-of-the-art mechanized combat platforms, xeno warfare divisions, and brand new energy weapons. But because of the xeno weapons created and utilized by the UC, even with some of the best mech divisions such as the elite 1st Cavalry Division, the Freestar really struggled to take any land or win any battles when fighting the xeno weapons. They were just too powerful to handle. The war reached its ultimatum within the year of 2311 when both factions got to the Freestar Collective's own system of Cheyenne to trigger the Battle of Cheyenne. Within this bloody battle, a flotilla of military and civilian Freestar ships used hit-and-run tactics to destroy a number of the UC Navy's major ships, which caught the UC off guard so much that they had to accept defeat and allow the Freestar to gain a vital, decisive victory. With this battle now over, the war had spanned over 3 to 4 years depending on when you'd pinpoint it all beginning, and both factions had lost too many during the war. It was time for a change as neither was really gaining any ground, and together the two both agreed the war should be brought to an end and things should be negotiated with an armistice that would bring about a new era of peace and cooperation between the two powers. But one of the biggest things the Freestar Collective wanted to highlight during this period was the sheer amount of war crimes some of the UC's active commanders had been involved with. With this being put on the table, the UC agreed to those terms to make sure that peace would be their priority and arrested all of those seen to have committed war crimes, including Commander Henry Durant, General Indira Rastogi, and Vay Victus for his involvement in the killing of thousands of civilians in Londinion. But the UC also had their own terms, and with that forced the Collective to court-martial the 1st Cavalry Division of the Free Militia for disobeying ceasefire orders during the Battle of Niira. With the Collective agreeing to these terms, the unit's leader, Major Paxton Hull, and other surviving members were sentenced to 20 years in prison, something the Freestar thought would be the end of all matters. But the 1st Cavalry Division would remember their betrayal and would seek their revenge when they got the chance to again. With the armistice agreed between the two parties, a third faction got involved to make sure they were a part of all that was being put up for offer, that being the faction known as House Varun, originally set up as a colony ship that was launched from New Atlantis in 2190 and reported as lost. With the three factions agreeing to the terms of the armistice, new laws would be put into place, the first being strict limits on the size and number of military fleets that each faction could wield, the second being that all mechs and xeno warfare weapons were banned from being used in any battles or future projects, the third being that all information about mech engineering and xeno warfare research would be collected and stored in a secure storage facility in New Atlantis called the Armastice Archives, and could only be accessed with the permission of representatives of all signatories of the armistice. One key from the UC, one key from the Freestar Collective, and one from House Varun, and only then could the data be revealed. That said, many people within the UC and Freestar can't quite understand why the archives live within the UC city of New Atlantis. For the Freestar, they don't mind too much as they see it as a gesture of trust. However, to a lot of the UC's own people, they feel the archives are a constant reminder of their bitter loss in the Colony War. But with peace now spreading all over the new changed settled systems, it seemed like a bright future was on offer. However, for some unknown reason, after signing the all all-important Armastice, House Varun would suddenly disappear and go out into hiding, with not many people knowing where they had gone or why, and also making it much harder for if anyone wanted to access the all-important archives. The Colony War was a real challenge for humanity. It was the first instance of a galactic war where it was more than just countries fighting for land and resources, but whole planets and star systems. Thousands had lost their lives in it, and to this day have been immortalized on the different planets owned by both the UC and Freestar Collective. The galaxy is now filled with peaceful worlds working together for a better humanity, with no more destructive mechs roaming the land and no xeno weapons being utilized by the UC or Freestar to take out people's enemies. However, with that said, all is not fully safe out there in the beauty of space. Many different smaller factions take from the larger ones, and veterans of the Colony War still hold a bitter hatred for what happened to them within it, looking to get their revenge. That, and between the UC and Freestar, there is still a small bit of tension with both factions not fully agreeing with how each other operates, and maybe one day that tension will boil over again, and the Armistice will mean nothing to them as they are plunged once again into another Colony War. Colony War 2 Electric Boogaloo. But for that, we will just have to wait and see what time brings. For now though, this has been the story behind the biggest war humanity has ever been involved in. This has been the story behind the brutal Colony War. I want to say a big thank you for watching this video, and do let me know if you'd like to see more Starfield lore videos. Whilst I don't think it's the best game I've ever played, it certainly has some cool questlines and stories that I would love to explore in the future. So if you want more, do give it a like, comment and subscribe, as that will help get these out there and allow me to see the demand for Starfield lore. I also want to say a huge thank you to my patrons who have stuck with the channel and allowed me to make these videos on a regular basis, including my small fishes, my big fishes Greg and Anthony, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Sith Lord 906, Video Gamer 75 and Havig, my sharks Alfred Correa, Jason X117 and Wow Such Gaming, and my megalodons Sinus and Hazy Thoughts. But that is all for now. Check out my other links, check out my audio only version on Spotify and Apple Music. Thank you all for watching again, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.